Okay. I think we can start off. Whoever joins could join later on. So I'm going to, this is mostly a tutorial based class, which means we're going to discuss a few things um, about the guidelines that's required for report writing. We already had a session before, I think a couple of weeks ago, or maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago, we had the first part of this professional writing workshop, wherein we discussed about the email writing. So the second part of it is report writing. And I want to clear at the outset that this is going to be a workshop, which means it's also tutorial. So it's not going to be just a lectem session, right? So you will be asked to do some activities. Most of them are, simple writing activities. Only tomorrow we'll be taking up the full known report. Of course, you'll get some time to write in the class just to show how it works, and so that I can also see how it works. So lesser the number of participants, better for me, so that I can pay more attention to this. Um, but just like the last session, the last part of the workshop, that is on email writing, this is also going to be mostly interactive, right? So I'm going to be highlighting or talking about a few guidelines that are universally recognized as far as the writing of report part is concerned. But keep it in mind that every time we talk about the writing part, no matter whether it's a report or email or anything, it's usually tailor made to the context and the purpose that we require to do. So every general understanding of what professional writing means remains same from the previous session, right? So while I was doing the last class, I did highlight for them a few things that's part of professional writing. So I do not wish to repeat it. So in case anyone of you is interested, I think those recorded sessions are available. You can maybe take a look at the first half an hour, 15 minutes of that session to have an understanding about it. But at the outset, professional writing is usually concise in nature, and it's also something that requires you to maintain a certain framework in writing. So each type of write up will have a different kind of framework. Email had one, report has something else. A minutes of the meeting might have something that's different from this. A ledger proposal might have a different framework than this. So the difference is in the framework, and the language suitable for each of them is what we are more concerned with. So even for this session, we are going to be discussing two aspects mostly broadly of report writing. One is of the structure or the framework that you follow to write a report. And second, most important part would be the language that you use, right? So it's quite different from how it works in email, right? Although it follows the overall skeleton of the professional writing, report will have a bit of more, it's a little more writing intensive work than email as such, right? Email is a very concise form, but report definitely, of course, report can be short. We have short reports and we also have long reports, but the language and framework for most of them remain the same. Okay, so this is just to begin to state a few things at the outset. Now, if I have to begin talking about the report, also by the way, I think the mail mentions 2 to 4. I usually keep it a little, longer to see if there are any other. It's just a buffer time. Sometimes people have doubts and they wish to ask things related to it. So I just keep it a little longer. But if we are doing fine, I think we can also wind it up by about 3:30. Not three definitely, but I think around 3:30 we can be done with this. Really don't have to push until 4. Okay, because I think 2 hours must be very taxing for a lot. Okay, so about report writing, um, I think most of the reports that you might have read, right, even if it is a small newspaper report, the smallest one could be something like that, okay? Or say, if you usually you don't get an access to that, but if you have seen maybe say a sample of that, then FIRs, right, the first investigation reports that usually the police department files. These are all the smallest or the shortest kind of reports, right? They do not run into huge volumes or too many pages. They usually are a 1 or 2 page affair, right? The newspaper report also is one of the shortest form of reports. I'm not talking about the size of them because we know newspaper works in a very different way, right? They're required to fit a lot of things in a very constricted space. So the report by itself, in its actual length, could be maybe a page or 2 or 3. But of course, the font size and everything, when they consider the tabloid or the newspaper, it changes, right? But the shortest form of report would be the one that you see in your newspaper or an FIR or even something like a diagnostic report. If you go to a lab to get, say, some blood work done, right? So once your test results are out, they give you a report, right? These are all forms of reports. But we are not concerned with any of these, right? We are not going to talk about either newspaper report or diagnostic report or FIRs because although they have the name report, it does not really justify the structure and the framework that um, ideally a report as it is understood follows, right? They don't have, if you look at them, you'll understand that, you probably already would have seen them. They do not really follow the structure of the report that usually a report as it is known to the professional writers follows, right? So we don't have to take them as our examples, or we do not have to use them as our starting point to understand what a report is. I know most of us would have been exposed to that now. We need to unlearn those things, right? So that is not what we mean by professional reports or your actual report writing. So in your actual report, what your report is supposed to do is usually what it does is that it sets out or it analyzes a given problem or a situation, right? So most of your reports then are going to contain a problem statement, right? You need to explicitly mention, you need to declare what your problem is, what your problem statement is, and the problem statement should also lead to the solution, right? But to begin with, to set it out, you need to understand that any professional report would deal with a problem statement or a situation that needs to be addressed or to which an action needs to be sought, right? So that is what constitutes a report in the professional writing, not your other type, right? It definitely needs to have recommendations made for future actions. It is not an ordinary report like what you see in the case of a diagnostics or a newspaper report. It is a factual paper, it's an academic document, right? It's an academic document which can also be at a later point, at any point this particular factual paper or academic document can be used for references. So this has a futuristic purpose. This is not something that you write today and you publish and it's forgotten and it's thrown away. That's what usually happens with newspaper reports and other kinds, right? People are going to read it and just forget about it. It's not going to be documented for a later cause unless someone wants to report or someone wants to refer to it in a retrospective way. But usually these things don't happen. We are not talking about that kind of reports. This report that we are dealing with is an academic factual paper, which is going to be properly documented for future purpose. It has a futuristic purpose to fulfill, right? So it holds important confidential information, right? And the form and content of a report, how the form looks, what exactly goes into it, the content of it, and what headings go into each of these reports. That definitely can vary between in the organizations and departments, or the purposes that you're writing these reports for. So although there could be a bit of a difference in the exact verticals or headings under which you prepare this report, the framework more or less remains the same, which means it analyzes a problem, it definitely contains recommendations for future actions, and it is a academic factual paper which is documented and stored for future purposes, for future references. Okay, so this is a quick introduction to what report writing means. In the elements of a report, first of all, the report needs to have a description of sequence of events. So now you're reporting, right? What does the word reporting mean? When you're reporting, you're basically going to tell people about a situation or a problem. And even if it is, a problem statement, you're going to highlight the various phases of that problem, right? And its solution, right? or in simple terms or in plain language, one could say you need to narrate or describe a sequence of events that led to that problem or the situation, and then your observation, your findings, and your conclusions and recommendations of the same. Right. So it needs to follow a certain sequential order. Sequence of events or the situation needs to be mentioned. Right. If it's a newspaper report, of course, the sequence of events or this order is basically a chronological order, right? Chronological is something that's related to time, right? But if you're writing, say, a report on, maternal health and infant mortality rate in India, that is not going to be chronological. Of course, it will have some elements of chronology. You might, for example, quote data from, say, 1990s to present, or maybe a particular period between 1990s to 2000 when maybe say the said infant mortality rate was too high and the reasons for that. So it may contain elements of chronology, but it's not strictly based on time, right? It will also have other sequences of how and when this problem arose, why it has happened, where exactly, which location or which geography in the country is most affected by it. So by description of sequence of events, I also mean these verticals. Okay, it's not simply a chronology based or time based detailing of an event or situation. Then carefully reference. This is very second point, very, very important. I told you this is an academic document, right? It's a factual paper. Any factual paper, any academic document requires referencing, because you cannot come up with this report on your own. You definitely have to refer to other materials, other documents, books, journals, sometimes videos, audios, surveys. So all of them feed into, the compilation of the report that you're writing. So all these sources that has helped you formulate this report, that has, added value to the report that you're doing, has helped you provide evidence for what you're writing, all of them need to be cited in your work, right? So a report definitely must have a referential section as well. You need to carefully cite it and provide references to each of the citation that you do. Then there has to be an evaluation of the results and facts, right? You don't simply state the fact in a report, you also evaluate those facts and show the results of the same, right? Simply stating facts. Now, look at a newspaper report. Does a newspaper report state any, do they evaluate? It's a question. If you've read newspaper reports, do newspaper reports evaluate? Or do they simply just place facts? What do they do?
Evaluate.
Newspaper reports, do they evaluate? Or do they simply tell you that so and so things happened here and there?
On the daily basis, it's just report the
Newspaper report is usually the daily basis thing, right? So anything, it could be any news, it could be something like an inauguration, right? So they simply state, they do not evaluate, like they do not answer, for example, why was a certain person called for the inauguration, or why that event happened, right? Evaluation usually answers the question how and why. So how and why is not something that you'd usually see uh, in a newspaper report, or even if it is there, it's not a well formed evaluation, right? There could be maybe say some elements of it here and there, but it's not a fully formed evaluation, because the newspaper report doesn't usually have the function of evaluation. They simply need to state, their function is to just state and be there, right? Just provide necessary details, that's it. But professional reports are an elaborated document, right? They need to carefully evaluate the facts and results that they present. Right? There has to be discussion on the findings, right? Which is the next point. Discussion of likely outcomes of future course of action, right? So it's not just stating the facts and the results, but it's also the evaluation of facts and results, so that you can, have a discussion of the likely outcomes of the problem statement at hand, or the solution that you have arrived at for the problem statement, right? And of course, recommendations to a course of action. Like this, I think the previous slide also explained the same point, that recommendations for the future course of action is a must in any report. Because understand, a report is also a persuasive document. You understand the meaning of the word persuasive? Have you come across this word any time before? Persuasive?
No, ma'am.
No, the persuasion is a new thing for you. Let me give you a few words and tell me if you have heard these words before, right? That I'm sure you would have already heard it, right? So some of this, like, you know, it's just a moment. Just trying to open a document that can maybe show you the difference, right? Uh, yeah, any question you have? Meanwhile, you may ask that. Persuasive is to, oh, okay, okay. Persuasive is to convince people to agree with them. Yeah, persuasive is, you're right, more or less right. It is, you know, your approach, persuasive approach is a kind of approach wherein you try to not simply convince someone, right? Uh, I mean, you have a reason to do that, right? There is a purpose that you need to fulfill, or you particularly are looking forward to an action, right? You want them to take a suitable action. So it's not just agreement, but also um, um, letting people take an action. That is the act of persuading. Basically means to have people believe in something so as to take an action in that regard, right? That would be the exact meaning of the word persuasion, right? So persuasive writing, then usually, if I, you know, uh, if I have to give you a few examples of some linguistic examples of the phrases and words that you may very commonly see in persuasive expressions or persuasive writing, those would be. um, Let me think about it. So say something like, so because you said agreement, right? I think making people agree, of course, is a part of that. So you're going to see a lot of words that are associated with making people agree, right? So uh, thing like, I would urge you to, right? So these are phrases. Mostly you may not find singular words, but you will see phrases, right? Uh, so I would urge you to, or uh, I think we could all agree on. It would be uh, well in our favor to consent upon. So these are some of the expressions that you may see in persuasive writing. Uh, than that, I think I'm looking for singular words which can, help you to understand this better. Although there are several phrases that you can come up with, but let's say, um, okay, yeah, it is the fact of the matter, right? Uh, Someone says, uses a phrase like, "It is proven that," or "I am convinced that," or "Everybody knows that." Now, see, use these expressions with some caution, because when you use something like, when you use authoritative phrases like "everybody knows that," maybe everybody doesn't know, right? Which is why referencing becomes important. Which is why backing your studies with some kind of findings that were presented in a journal or a book or book chapters is important. So that makes it more authoritative, right? You simply saying everybody knows that or it is proven that doesn't work on its own. While it adds the linguistic element of a persuasive sentence or a persuasive phrase there, it still needs to be backed with evidence to make it more believable, right? To make it more authentic, more credible in nature. So even when you say, I'm convinced that, or when you say it is imperative that, or the fact of the matter is, or everybody knows that, all of these persuasive tone words or phrases, you still need to back them up with evidences, right? You need to give them evidential clearances, right? You need to cite. And by evidence here, I mean, whatever you have read, whatever studies or reports or surveys you have read, quote them, cite them, so that your persuasion becomes even stronger, right? People, it is persuasive, your writing is persuasive, and it is backed by evidence, and hence people are even more convinced that what you're saying is right or what you saying carries weight, right? So that both of those things are important. Your language needs to be persuasive. At the same time, you should also provide evidence, right? So that's what persuasion means. So a report being a persuasive document, it needs to add to this persuasive style of writing, persuasive tone of writing. All of what you see on the slide, which constitutes the elements of a report, is important, right? Giving a proper description of the sequence of events, giving references, evaluating the facts and results, than merely stating them, discussing the likely outcomes, providing recommendations. All of them structurally and linguistically contribute to making your report a more persuasive document, right? Is that clear? Any questions that you have from this part, or shall we move a little ahead? I'll show you, bits and pieces of how language works also in between. Today, I plan to do some exercise with you on the aspect of wordiness. So once in a while, I'll take you back to the language aspect also, because language is very, very important as far as professional writing is concerned. Framework is not very tough. You can, of course, it's readily available. You don't even need this workshop for that. You can just go online and check for the framework, and it's available. But language part is where it becomes tough. Okay. Is this part clear? The part on persuasion and how the elements of a report is tied to persuasion and tone persuasion. Clear? Yes, no? Okay, all right. Fine. So we'll move ahead. We'll look at the language part now. Okay. So I'll discuss the formal language aspects in a report with you. Some of them have overlaps with what we have discussed about formal and informal language when we were talking about professional writing in general. Some of them are specific to the report writing as well. Okay. Particularly, I think the last few points, they are more specific to the report writing. And the first few would be something that is common to all kinds of professional writing. Okay. So the first part is no contractions, right? So we'll return to this point while we discuss on wordiness, but no contractions. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, this kind of expressions, right? We are sorry, we are right, um, or something like won't, and right, these are all examples of what we call as contractions or contractive forms language. So this one is what, this is I have, we are, or we were, depending on whatever the tense is. Won't is will not, right? Can't is cannot. So these are called contractive forms in language. So usually the contractive forms in English language, they usually used in spoken language. Okay, spoken language is where they're most usually found, because when you speak with people, you tend to keep it short, right? Short in the sense, it's not short actually. The phrase we use for that is economy of language, right? When you speak with someone, you try to keep it more economical. Economical in the sense, you don't economical as in the use as opposed to generous, right? When you're being generous, you're not bothered with the amount or the time in the stretch of time or anything. You're just using it abundantly. But when you make something judicious or more economical, what you're trying to say is that use only as much as required, right? Only to the requirement. Do not use way too much. Now, when people speak with each other, they tend to shorten their phrases a lot because, you don't want to bore the other person, right? You do not want to make the conversations boring, and uh, talking too much or expanding too much on your phrase and your sentences can, uh, can make what your message could become confusing and ambiguous to the person who's listening to you. And the actual message that you want to deliver, your expressions could get lost, right? So there's also a risk of losing the actual meaning that you want to present also. So for various reasons, as human beings, our brain is wired to make things economical, right? To make use of things as much as only it is required, right? Do not use more than what is required. So even language is used like a resource by the brain, right? The brain uses several other resources. It uses visual intelligence, it uses arithmetic intelligence, it uses the intelligence of kinesthetics, right? A lot of things the brain is wired to use all of this, but in a very economical way. And same goes to the language skills as well, right? It uses it economically. So in speaking, when we very commonly see these contractions, because, well, for the reasons that I told you, but in the written format, however, which is the moment I say written, you should know that I'm talking about professional writing, right? So because anything that is written and documented is professional. Here onwards, whether I say written language or professional language or formal language, understand that they all the three mean the same, right? They're all equally replaceable. So in the written language, the formal language, we do not follow these contractions forms, right? We do not write the contractive forms. We are required to completely elaborate on what you're writing. So you need to expand on each of these contractions. So instead of writing I apostrophe V, you will have to write I have, right? Your reports or your emails, professional emails cannot carry contractions or contractive forms, right? So that is first part as far as the language and structure part is concerned. Second thing is less common words. Now, what do we mean by less common words? Are we saying we should use more less common words, or are you saying, are we trying to say that we should not use less common words? What do we mean? Should we use more uh, common words, or should we use less common words? What do you think could be? We're talking about a professional document. So should it contain more common words or should it contain more specialized words? Let me put it that way. I think you'll be able to answer it better.
Specialized word.
Hmm? Use less common words, right? So which means you're going to use specialized words, right? So we are not going to keep our language vague and very general, right? So instead of using generic terms, you're going to use specialized, or some people may also use the word specific terms, right? Specific terms, or some would even say technical terms, right? You can use technical terms, which is referred to as technical jargons by some people. So, uh, anything, right? Specialized, specific, technical. You're going to use less common words, right? Because this is a specialized document. This is a professional document. It is meant for a certain kind of audience. It's not meant for the ordinary, right? It's not meant for a leisurely purpose. Not everyone's going to sit and read this report. This is meant for a bunch of people who are associated with that particular issue or situation or the problem statement at hand. They're stakeholders of that particular case at hand, right? So this is written for a specialized audience, for people who understand the area, who understand the domain you're writing in. So the words that you choose to formulate your report should also be of the same order. Then no slangs and colloquialisms. I think last time we had a very detailed discussion on what constitutes slangs and colloquialisms. Um, Anything that is not formal, right? Anything that is culturally rooted or geographically or regionally rooted. See, we know we all speak our own languages too, right? We have our mother tongues and our first languages. So when we talk about um, Bissell, please mute yourself. Yeah. So, yeah, avoiding informal words, yes, that's right. But slangs and colloquialisms are even, they're not just informal words, right? The informality comes in from the fact that a lot of such expressions that constitute as slang and colloquialisms, these are all culturally rooted, right? So, sometimes culturally rooted, sometimes it's only, it's only accessible to people living in a particular region or geography, or sometimes it is accessible to only people belonging to a certain social class, right? So the registers, by registers, I mean the version of the language or the variety of the language that you speak. That particular variety, even when you have people from the same state or the same part of the country, you see that even people from your own state do not understand, right? So there are regional differences, social class wise differences. There are other registers that are used only by a certain community of people. So all of these markers make that variety a bit inaccessible to even people who speak the standard variety, people who understand the standard variety of the same language. These problems exist in English as well, right? Maybe you are someone who have grown up watching a lot of video games, right? Maybe you're someone who has grown up watching a lot of English series and movies, right? So your English speaking is fine, I think, as far as speaking is concerned, should be okay. But when you talk about writing, right, um, this part becomes a little difficult, right? So there's going to be an influence of where you learned the language, right? If you talk to the children today, right? Maybe I don't know what's your age group, but at least at the time I was growing up, I haven't seen this kind of much of the English that I hear from the kids today, they sound very different, right? If you also pay attention, you talk to the college goers today, you see that their language, particularly the English language that they're requiring, has got a lot of flavor of the English series terms, right? Which includes a lot of cuss words, right? Very, I mean, it's beyond the informal. So if you look at the change in the language, it's quite drastic. You have access to language now as opposed to the times when at least people like I were growing up, we had very limited access to the English language, right? Or rather the language that we had access to was more of a formal language. So the way we learned it and we grew up, we see now a drastic change because now more pop culture is accessible to people, and hence you see that kind of influence in the way they speak. Now, while as long as it remains in the speaking, it's well and fine because it enables communication among people, it enables people to express themselves. But the problem arises when it comes to writing, right? Writing is still formed in any language, whether that is English or any other language at hand. Writing is still a very formal business in any world. So if you use the same kind of expression, same kind of language as you write, it's going to it's going to land you in trouble, right? That's not going to be very helpful. It's not going to be helpful to either you or the person reading it because spoken language usually is very limited in expression, right? It remains very limited to a certain kind of certain variety or a certain dialect, certain register of the given language. It does not encompass the language as a whole, right? That's the problem. So this colloquialism is a problem there. And to this, very well, the fourth point is connected very well to the same thing. No stereotypical or biased language, right? Even biases creep in within the language because of cultural factors and influences of uh, what and where you have acquired this language from, in what circumstances you have acquired this language from. Very commonly found stereotypical expressions are based on or they come from the biases based on the categories of gender, sometimes based on the categories of race, ethnicities, or even disability, right? People, without knowing, a lot of people would just end up using words which are not very suitable or which are stereotypical to people or human beings with disabilities, right? So that is, these are all problems that creep into the language, not knowingly. Most of the times it doesn't happen knowingly, but it just happens, right? It happens because we are not careful as we speak, but then we need to be careful as we write, right? Because this is a documented material, unlike what you say may not leave behind a trail of document, but what you write certainly leaves behind a trail of document. So, source of a language while writing should be from other reports. And yeah, you can, even if you're not going to depend too much on them, if you're formulating it yourself, right? Every time you cannot do that. Even if you're using it yourself, some of these things you need to check before you write on your own, right? So yeah, as a sample, you can, just to you can use other reports and other textbooks or language of the textbook as a touchstone, right? Touchstone means a sample or an example. You can follow it as a what in common language we call as a role model, right? A model, it can be modeled after that, but always try to invent or you know um make things on your own as well. And when that happens, when you're going to use language independently, independent of the touchstone that you have referred to, these points also have to be kept in mind, right? You need to work on these aspects while you use the language independently. Uh, Ignores diversity. What is this? Oversimplified. Ignores diversity, complexity, and what is this, Saurabh?
Yes, ma'am. In stereotypical, are these
Huh.
included?
Oversimplified, ignores diversity. Yeah, ignores diversity, complexity, and individuality. Yes, that's right. Stereotype, because when you, that is what you do when you stereotype something. When you're stereotyping, you're ignoring the diversity, complexity, and the individuality of your subject, right? Whatever you are writing about, whoever your subject is, you're doing all the three to the concerned subject. Okay, so one word for that would be stereotyping. Whatever you have written, no, ignores diversity, complexity, individuality. That act is called stereotyping, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Then the next one would be no shorthand, right? Shorthand. I think this is pretty straightforward. I don't think we need a lot of discussion on that. Shorthands should be avoided as much as possible because shorthands, again, they are not accessible. Not everyone will understand what you mean by the shorthand, right? Unless it's a universally accepted abbreviation, you shouldn't be using them anywhere in formal reports, right? Now, sometimes what happens is, say you use a certain, your report, you've titled your report, right? Or you're referring to some other report in your own report and it has a title, right? So, for example, say I want to write something on, say I'm writing about the performance, student performance index in a certain document and I want to quote a certain report by the NAC, right? What is NAC? The National Assessment and Accreditation Council, right? So every time I'm not going to write National Assessment and Accreditation Council's report, National Assessment and Accreditation Council's report, I don't have to repeat it every time. So the first time I write, I'm going to write National Assessment and Accreditation Council. In the brackets, I give NAAC, right? NAC. And then every other time now I mention, I'm going to only use NAC. Okay. In the bracket, some people mention that NAC from here onwards. Now, NAC is an established thing. Everyone is a national body, so everybody knows it. You do not have to do that. But if you are coining this term on your own because it was too long and every time you don't want to repeat the name and you want to shorten it to an abbreviation, then the first time you mention it entirely. In the brackets, you give your abbreviation. And along with it, you write that whatever, right? Say, for example, the abbreviation I use is, let's say, BSEF, right? Let's say BSEF. This is my from. Some people write from now on, or just a second. Where is the screen? Okay. Right. So BSEF. Yeah, so there are two ways. So either in the first go, you write the full expression and then you leave it in the brackets. Sometimes what people do is they will write the short form in the brackets, but they'll also, leave another document, sorry, another explanation to it. And explanation means, you'll see something like this. I'm going to leave some of them in the chat. You can take a look at that, how it is done. So the first one is this. Whatever. So this BSCF, I don't know what it is. I just made it up so that I can show you how it is done. So one of the one is you give the abbreviation and then write BSCF from now on, which means every time you uh, uh, refer to BSCF in the document, this expansion is what you mean. That's the understanding. Or something like this. DSEF, DSEF, and then, or the first time you write it, and then you, in the bracket, you would write hereafter referred to as BSEF, right? So these are two. Some people would write BSEF from now on, or you expand and then you write in the brackets. You can also write hereafter referred to as BSEF, so that you can avoid repeating the full form, the full expanded name every time you write a document. Right? This could be done to sometimes save the space and to keep it more economical. Right? Repeating is awkward every time. So to avoid these two things, you can either use one of the first one is okay. The second one is more formal. Formal documents usually they follow this particular format, right? Hereafter referred to as CSEF or CMEIF, whatever the full form is. Okay. So that is one. Two ways will be referred to as from here on, henceforth referred to as, right? All of them are more, very commonly seen, but formal documents usually carries hereafter referred to as. Keep that in mind. But otherwise, you're not supposed to use any other shorthands in your report. Do not use them as much as possible. If it is really important, then you can use the format that I just showed you. Okay. Uh, then no phrasal verb. Okay, now this one, it's not a strictly no phrasal verb policy, but it's more about using more formal phrasal. So it's a phrasal verbs again, just like your slangs and colloquialisms, they are part of the spoken language and contractions also, right? Just like all of them, the phrasal verbs are more a part of the spoken language, which is why generally people would opine to keep them away from your formal documents or professional documents like a report. But uh, I don't think it should be a no phrasal verb policy, but what you need to make sure is that your phrasal verbs, even if you're using them, they need to try to avoid them as much as possible. Try to use more synthetic verbs, right? But if at all you're using, make sure that these are phrasal verbs that are used more formally, right? So I cannot give you a list of formal phrasal verbs. Again, like Rima was suggesting, you read the other reports and other textbooks, you will understand what are those sets of phrasal verbs which are used mostly in the formal domains, right? So think about, something that sorts. But never use phrasal verbs if you're not sure if it whether the given phrasal verb is formal or informal. It's better to avoid. Use it only when you're sure that it's been seen or that you have located them before in formal documents. If you do not know, if you're not sure, it's always better to avoid the phrasal verb and using the more synthetic form of verb. Okay, so keep that in mind. Synthetic verbs, you understand what they mean? What are synthetic verbs? Any idea what are synthetic verbs? These are your normal verbs, right? Any normal verb, any main verb, any action verb or state verb, right? Like they're singular verbs. They're not in a phrase, right? So any common verbs like think or love or hate or play or jump, any verb, any common form of verb is a synthetic verb. Right? Synthetic verb means the ones that are not phrasal, right? That's all. Then third person narrative. The last three, they're particularly for the report writing. Third person narrative, reported speech, and passive voice. Okay. So usually in a report, right, professional document, that is when now every time I say report, I mean professional report because that's what is under discussion, right? So in a professional report, always the narrative is a third person narrative, right? What is a third person narrative? What are the other names for third person narrative? No, no. Is this the first time you're hearing third person narrative? Third person, right? From grammar, you would know what is person.
Ma'am, I think
Nobody?
it's a third person statement, that will record
Ah,
it in the
no, no.
report.
What is third person? So in grammar, what is third person? In English grammar, what is the third person narrative? Not narrative, third person. So in the first and the second person, um, who are you talking about in the first person? Are you talking about someone else or yourself? Yourself, right? First person is definitely the person who's talking. Second person is about whom you talk, right? The one who is referred to. Third person is who? About whom you're talking, but the person isn't present there personally, right? It's about a character who's not a part of the conversation. You are maybe talking about them, but they aren't physically. It's not necessary that they are available physically there, right? So it's a character that is outside, the event, right? The scope of the event. So reports are usually like that, right? When you compile a report, it's not about a second person. It's not a personal thing. It's more of an impersonal thing. It's about an event or a body or an organization or a person that is not immediately connected to your environment. You're only reporting on that person or the event or situation, which is where the name third person, that's why the narrative gets the name third person narrative, right? So the narrator or the person who's compiling the report is not a character or is not a stakeholder in the report that you are writing or in the problem or the situation that you're analyzing. You are not a part of that problem, right? You are looking at a problem, you've identified a problem, and you're suggesting a solution or you're suggesting recommendation to the identifier. You're a third person. So you're going to write it in the third person narrative basically means that you're going to write it in an impersonal form. Okay, it's not going to be a personal thing for you. So and your language should reflect that, right? So no I's, no U's, no these, right? It's always going to be they, it, she, he, them, right? There. So this is what it's mostly going to be. Uh, that's the point of third person narrative. Now, what is the use of this? I think I already answered that question. But why do you think third person narrative is the best form of writing for report writing? How does it help your writing when you are a third person? That's a good question to ask. No? Sometimes this narration is also referred as external narration or more complicated and less commonly known word, heterodiegetic narration. Okay, this kind of writing is also referred to as heterodiegetic. Why heterodiegetic? Because hetero is heterodiegetic, outside, right? The narrator is outside the story. That's what it means. So if you're outside the story or outside the event, what is the benefit? You can keep it objective. You can keep it impartial, and that is what is required for professional write-ups like report writing. Yeah, that is a reason why this kind of narration is the best suitable one. Okay. Reported speech. Reported speech also from your grammar classes at least, right? What is a reported speech? Reported speech. Again, right? This is also something that is going to help your narrative, right? Because you are going to, what do you do in a reported speech? You report the content, yeah, without, quoting the person's or the subject's exact words, right? You say or you narrate what has happened, right? But you do not use their exact words. Yeah, that's the difference. You understand that? That's how you do reported speech, right? So examples, she said that she was tired. So yeah, she did say that, maybe when she said, I am tired, but you're only reporting. So you're not going to use the exact words. And to report, you then say, she said that she was, right? So this again, reported speech also again adds the impression of being impersonal and impartial in your observation, right? Or you're only reporting what you observe. You don't have any stake in it, right? That's what makes it believable, right? People would consider it as something that has been done objectively and observably objectively, not something that has been written based on your subjective opinions, right? So that's the thing. And then the last point, passive voice. Passive voice, again, this is a grammatical component, but then it also has a functional role to play. Grammatical component, what do you understand about passive voice? Can someone someone enlighten us? What are passive voices? Hello? Am I audible, guys? Yes. Okay. Thank you. One second. Tell me. So, passive voice, what do they do? Hmm. What happens in a person? Passive voice. Let's maybe begin with that. Okay, I think Rima has given me an example for this. It's okay. Train was boarded by my. So what is happening with this? What do you do in passive voice? Okay, grammatically, yes. I mean, not grammatically, but to look at the sentence itself, you're talking about the positioning of the elements, then yes, you see that uh, the subject position of the sentence is now occupied by the object, and the object position either takes the subject or sometimes it doesn't take. It can even become an adjunct, right? Like, for example, if I say the boy killed the snake was killed by the boy is an expansion, but by the boy is not really a requirement, right? It's not necessary. Simply, I can simply say that the snake was killed, right? That's also fine grammatically. So point here is that in both the cases, in your example as well as my example, grammatically it is fine, but it has other functions, which is the suppression of the agent. Passive voice is usually used when you want to suppress the agent, right? You do not want to make a direct claim on who did it, right? You don't want to report on the doer of the action, right? And there could be several reasons for that. The reasons could be that you're not sure now, right? You're only suggesting. You only have like a you don't have a full picture of it right now. You only see certain implications, and the situation points towards A being the problem or B being the problem, but you're not sure yet. If you're not certain yet, right? So you don't want to write about something that you're not sure about. So passive voice helps you in such cases. And if the case is that you're not sure or that you require further studies on something, then passivity here does not mean not taking up responsibility, right? Here, it's not in a negative sense. Not taking up responsibility or not saying the actual agent is not a negative thing. This is basically a caution that you're exercising so as to not make um, very strong claims without proper evidence, without being sure about it. So, although passive voice is considered as a bad thing in writing in general, in the case of reports, it's not considered a bad idea, right? It's a good, academically speaking, in academic writing, passive voice is not considered a very bad thing, right? The reason is this, right? Sometimes to remain objective, to not make tall claims without having proven what you are saying, without having that 100% evidence of that. When something is only a suggestion, when something is only a mild implication, using passive voice helps you to tone down, right? It helps you tone down, uh, you know, uh, helps you take a reduced responsibility. You're not claiming full responsibility for the statement, but you're only, as a researcher or as a writer, you're only giving certain implications that can point in that direction which others can take up and investigate if they wish to. But you are not going to take the entire ownership. So it helps you. In that sense, it helps you tone down, make your statements more milder and milder for the purpose of making it um, how do I put it, milder, because you don't have strong evidences as of now, right? So this is a good thing. It's a good practice. It's a saving grace in academic writing sometimes when you don't have hard data to substantiate your claims, right? Uh, I mean, not yet, right? Of course, you will have to gather them later on if you have to present it properly. But at the point when you're, talking about it, to save you from, any embarrassment of being pointed out that you do not have hard data to substantiate it, this language helps you. Keeping your sentences, keeping your language a bit passive helps you. Okay? So beyond grammar, passive voice then has a very strong function to play in academic writing, in professional writing, right? So that's the point. So in report, you're going to make use of all the three: third person narrative, reported speech, passive voice, right? All of them imparting um, more impersonality, more, impartial tone, more non-subjective tones to your writing, right? So that is about the language of formal language used in a report. I also want to show you another part, one more thing that you want to show you before I move to the next part, is the basics of report writing. One more thing on the language. I'm going to stop sharing this slide because I want to show you that document. Just give me a moment before I do that. Yeah. Just let me know if you can see the screen. Okay. How do I use this one?
Ma'am.
So when you're using persuasive language, how do you use third person? You just need to make sure that you don't use I and we, right? Those are the commonly used words that make it personal. You keep it third person, whatever I and we. So if you say that um, I am convinced that, you just change it to the report convinces us that. The report agrees with the argument that, right? So you change it accordingly. Uh, of course, he, she, it is not going to take it up. The moment you say third person narrative, it basically means you're going to replace it with more, common addendum terms like this, right? The report agrees, or if you have referred to some other studies or reports, then you mentioned that the 1995 report on the common framework for learning points towards or contents that or agrees that or highlights that, that's all. That's what I meant. Okay, Rima?
Ma'am.
No, is Rima around? Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Why we use passive voice in report writing, while these all about the factual data and for use for future reference. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
uncertainty. So why we use
Hmm.
passive voice in report writing actually?
Sorry, I did not get your question. Is your question why do we use passive voice in report
Yes,
writing?
ma'am. Actually, there's
Hmm.
no direct linking of passive
Hmm.
voice to this because there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think it includes negative things on future
Uh,
references.
oh, are you adding to it, or are you asking why? Are you asking a question to me, or are you saying that
Yeah, I am
we
just
don't
asking
use
general
because of this?
question. Yes, ma'am.
Hmm. Huh. Oh, yeah, obviously, because see, if you make a strong claim without having a backup, then it's going to backfire, right? Sometime later, people are going to call you out and say that, see, you mentioned something without having proper data to substantiate your claims, right? So while your data might be substantiating or might be indicating something, right? It might be pointing towards a certain trend, but maybe you do not have enough data. Maybe your sample size was limited. See, data will have some kind of drawbacks, right? All data is not always clean, right? A lot of cleanup needs to be done on the data. Sometimes the data that you collect could need not be, the ones that can give you a proper result also. So even when studies are done on large groups, researchers, they take this caution. They always they make this they ensure that they don't talk as if they are making an absolute claim, right? Not making an absolute claim is always in the favor of the writer, right? Because given that you're writing something that's going to be documented, it can attract penalties later if what you have published has caused several errors. I'll give you an example, good example for that. Actually, um, particularly people who write in medical journals, right? So, say you have done some studies on the effectiveness of a drug, right? And although your lab results suggest that there could be say 95% of possibility that some certain disease that you're addressing could be cured, they always leave a certain buffer out, right? They leave a certain trial out. They never go up to 95% efficacy kind of statements in their arguments, because understand that the drug trials are only done on a limited population. So as and when the population size enlarges, you could also see counter results to this. And all of these counter results, you cannot record them, right? Because it in the case of medical administration, it's a case by case basis. Maybe a set of population with a certain kind of condition may not respond well to the treatment protocol, right? So in that sense, if the researcher is going to say and publish that this is 100% foolproof and 95% foolproof, that's not going to work, right? It can attract penalties in the form of, very strong penalties, because this is about people's lives. What if, someone looked at your result, looked at your claims, and then administered it on to people without exercising caution? There can be loss of life. There can be decapacitation. People could suffer other side effects, right? So to avoid any such repercussions, to avoid attract any such penalties, people do take this. They make use of the language sometimes to escape, so that it's not taken against them in the court of law, right? They could say that, see, my studies were suggestive of this. I said it suggests. I never said that it will 100% do this. Okay. So passive voice in that sense helps you to not run away from your responsibility, of course, but it helps you soften your stance on something, right? Especially as a reader, when I look at it, I know that, okay, this person is not saying 10%. This person is saying that the data suggests so and so trend. Okay. Not saying that this will be the case. This is the case. Okay.
So, can we say that we are countering that those 5% that you have given to us, like medical field? So, can we
Uh,
say that it's actually for countering the things? So, we use the passive voice
for countering things, we don't use passive voice. We
because
use passive by using.
we use all those 5% that are not actually
But
the.
that has got nothing to do with passive voice. No, that the countering thing is a different thing. This is on your report when you are presenting something to avoid, because you are not sure. You still cannot say 100%. You're only providing implications of what you are saying, right? Your study is only showing implications. It's showing some suggestions. It's giving some recommendations, and recommendations cannot be always 100%. So you use passive voice to indicate that. That is the use of passive voice in reports. Countering is not, you don't use passive voice, or passive voice, at least to my knowledge, doesn't have a function to counter anything. You
Yes.
use passive voice to present your case, right? So without
Yeah.
running too much into the problem of absolute certainty. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So we will spend some time on this language part. See. Mm, you see this document here, right? It's titled Wordiness from San Jose State University Writings, and it's a good document by Shana Seminar. Okay, so Wordiness is what? Don't have to look at the document, but if someone asks you what's wordiness, in simple terms, what do we mean by wordiness? It's basically, writing 10 words when 5 words would do, right? That is what is called wordiness. You say that your sentence is wordy or your document has wordiness, basically mean to say that, you have wrote 10 or 15 words for something that would have, that would have been done by 5 words, right? Instead of using five, you've used 10. Even with 5 words, you could have explained whatever you wanted, but instead you chose to write such a long, wordy sentence, right? That's what wordiness means. In simple terms, it is word. So, and in academic writing, wordiness is looked down upon, right? In professional writing, people do not appreciate wordiness at all, right? Some of the points here, the first thing is the sentence length, right? Why is sentence length such a big problem? Why people are so fussy? People could ask, so it's just a sentence, it's okay. Can't you spend another 2-3 minutes reading it? I've had a personal experience myself. I had to submit a research report, and the word limit was 4,000, right? It's a short paper. But when I wrote and I submitted, it came up to about 5,800 words. And I thought it's okay. And because it was for an internal assignment for a course, and it was not for a journal paper. So if you're sending it for a journal paper, then you take additional measures, right? You're very careful because they're very strict. If they say 4,000, it's 4,000. One word more and they'll reject. But because it was an internal assignment, I did not like really care about it. I was like, okay, 5,800 is not a big deal. It's just 1,800 above the limit. And even out of that 5,800, only, sorry, not 4,000, 5,800, 4,800, right? So 4,000 was the limit, and I wrote 800 words more, right? And I thought it should be fine because out of that 800, also about 446 odd words were for the reference section. I'm like, it's just a matter of 200, 250 words. Why should the professor have a problem? I did not. I just sent it out. And since I did not get a response from him for about 2 weeks, I was wondering if I had, sent it to the right person, or did he even open and read it, or what was the issue? Because people here, they receive so many emails every day. They at least receive 100 to 150 emails from different departments. Different people mail them for various reasons. So maybe it got lost in all that cloud there. So I wrote back to him asking if there was a problem, if I should resend, if he had seen the email. And the response I got was that yes, I did. But I did not evaluate the paper because you've overshot your word limit by 800 words. Okay? And I mean, obviously, I was not very happy about it because I know that, okay, it's just a matter of 200 words. Why is the person creating so much of a fuss, right? When he looks at the paper, he can see that some 500 odd words, 446 odd words is the reference, which means the additional count is just 200 words. What's the big deal? And I could not stop but wonder why was that decision taken. But anyway, he said you need to trim it to 4,000 word limit and then resend it. I did it because, of course, my grades rested on them. So I had to redo that and send. But I did go back and ask why was that a problem. I would really like to know why those 200 words were a problem. How much time it would have taken. 1 minute, 2 minutes to read, maximum 2 minutes to read 200 words, let's say 100 words per minute. Of course, we read faster than that, especially people in academic world because they read, reading is their job. So people do read fast. So what was the big? And that's what one thing that he told me is that, see, it's not just about how much extra time will I take to read it. It's not about time. It's about the art of writing. You're a writer, you're a researcher, and hence you're also a writer. A researcher is basically an author or a writer, right? That's what you do. So if you're a writer and an author, you should know how to write things as economically as possible. If you can do with 5 words, do with 5 words. Do not write 10 words, right? It also shows your respect for the audience, for the person who's reading, that you respect their time and their priorities, right? So do not take your reader for granted. If you can say something in five, can write something in 5 words, write it in 5 words. Do not expect the reader to sit and read all your additional 10, 15, 30, 50, whatever those number of words. And you probably think that, you're offering a new lease of life to them, but that's not the case. People are busy, they have other things to do, right? And when they spend some time reading your work, they would like to keep it more economical, right? They would like to keep things more sharp. They have to, they would wish it to be crisper, to be sharper, to be to the point. So it's about the art of writing. It's not about saving a minute or two of your reading time, right? And it made a lot of sense, right? If I am given a document in which people go on writing, and especially relevant things, right, then I'm also going to be, I'm not going to be very happy about it, right? I won't get upset, but it's also going to affect my impression of you as a writer, right? I would feel like you're not someone who knows how to express yourself. So this is the problem with wordiness, right? So in academic writing, whether it's a long form of writing like a research paper, or whether it is something like an email, right, which is the shortest form of professional communication, or a report which stands somewhere in between, right? Reports can be very long also, by the way. They can also run into volumes and books and all. But even a short report, even if you're talking about a short report, wordiness is not a welcome, tendency in writing, right? So one, you should uh, take active measures, be very proactive in trying to reduce wordiness in your writing, right? The first thing, the sentence length, right? So sentence length is important, because not just because it's going to waste somebody's time, because it's a part of knowing how to write well, because it interferes, the first line here, right, second paragraph, see, interferes with understanding its meaning, right? If you write more than what is required, it's possible, very possible, that you're going to lose the message, right? You're going to the message that you're trying to convey will get lost somewhere in between all this, complicated, lengthy sentences. That's one part, right? Second thing is confusing the reader, right? Can cause ambiguity to the readers. People may not be able to catch the exact message. They'll get confused, and that's going to then the effect of sentence length is not just time. It is also the quality of writing, the quality of the meaning making process, right? All of that is at stake when you're not ensuring that the wordiness is reduced, right? Uh, so we are going to look at some of the aspects that can make your write-up wordy, right? So we're going to discuss few instances, which will, there are examples as well in this document, which is why I chose this one to also demonstrate what we mean by, different types of wordiness. So we look at the first one here, redundancies and repetition. So one of the forms in which people tend to make their sentences wordy is through redundant writing and repetition, right? So what is redundancies and repetition, right? Or what can they do? Again, they do the same thing, right? They can dilute and muddle the meaning of your sentences, right? Can we look at that example here? If you, example, I enjoy power walking. Just look at the highlighted part and then read the revised part. I enjoy power walking quickly in the nighttime twilight under the dark sky. I enjoy power walking at night. So if you look at these two sentences, tell me if the revised version is making any compromise with the meaning. That is, if I remove in the nighttime twilight under the dark sky, right? If that part, which is the redundant part, right? If I remove that from the sentence, which is the revised sentence, is it making any difference to the meaning of the revised sentence?
It makes a slight difference.
What difference does it?
I know that it's like not about to rain, so it's like dark sky. So
Sorry, come again.
um, it's like it's about to rain. They say that
Ah,
it's under dark sky, so I know that there is the weather is like about to rain. So and that's why they have to power walk
but
quickly.
we are talking about the night time, right? So how do you make difference of the dark sky at night and cloudy? sky in the daytime?
Ma'am, night sky, it's night actually. There's no need to dark sky to mention that.
Haha,
But
yeah, that point I get. That point I get. I was just curious to know that because she
whether
mentioned.
whether it is cloudy or not, it doesn't
Yeah,
change.
yeah. So, uh, see, we are talking about the night time. So obviously it is dark. It's not going
Yes,
to be very, there is no question of asking whether it was dark or
it's
the
night actually,
one
so there's no
understand.
meaning of all this.
So in the nighttime twilight under the dark sky, all these three different phrases, that at least three different phrases there in the nighttime twilight and under the dark sky. All those three, they're redundant or they're repetitive because they're all pointing towards the same thing. They're all saying basically that it's a nighttime, right? That's
Hmm.
all. So you take it off the sentence and it is not going to make okay, like she said, it could be maybe there's a slight change here and there, but then that's not an absolutely necessary difference, right? We can do without that difference also. Even if you take it out, it's not going to seriously affect the meaning of the sentence. Essentially, we are saying that I enjoy power walking at night. That's all, right? So whenever it is unnecessary or whenever you think the detailing is irrelevant, right? When it and irrelevant means when it is not adding any meaning, when it is not adding anything substantial to your writing, right? That phrase is redundant. That kind of phrases are called redundant phrases. Redundant, irrelevant, right? They all go well together. Redundant because absolutely no meaning, right? It's not doing anything good to the sentence, only occupying some space, right? We can very well do without them. So this is the first kind of wordiness, right? To when you're checking for wordiness in your writing, one of the instances would be, or what you should be looking for is this redundancy. Is there redundant? Are there redundant, irrelevant phrases or words in my sentence? If you spot some of them, if you think they're absolutely unnecessary, you remove them. If it is giving some, adding something to it, some kind of additional information and description, which if you think if I take this out, it's going to completely or at least partially change the meaning of the sentence, then keep it. If it does not make any difference, throw it. Right? That's how you uh, check on this part. Right now. Uh, Second one, see this one. So the first sentence, and I enjoy power walking, we're basically looking at the meaning part, right? So if you remove the redundant words entirely from the sentence, the meaning does not change. Now look at the second one. Tip two, if you can replace a series of words with a single, more specific word, the meaning does not change, right? So one thing is you can remove the redundant phrases to avoid wordiness. That will not affect the meaning of the sentence. Second thing is again to avoid wordiness, you can do a second thing, that is you replace a series of words with a single more specific in such a way that it does not change the meaning of the sentence, right? So look at this example. At this point in time, there are currently far too many prisoners of war, also known as POWs. So we have done two trimming, right? One is in the beginning at this point in time, and then the last part, which is also known as POWs. What have we done now? Instead, we've just included them as an abbreviated thing in the bracket, right? There are currently too many prisoners of war. Okay, that is enough. That conveys you that part is what forms the crux of the meaning of the sentence, right? Rest of the things they just look like some kind of embellishments. They absolutely have nothing to do with it. You remove them and it is not going to make much changes to the meaning of the sentence. So this is also one. One is simply removing the unnecessary part. Second one is just adding one specific word in order to remove all the series of other words to reduce wordiness. Right? Now, second instance is the overuse of transitional phrases. What are transitional phrases? You have some examples on the screen. Because, for example, for instance, however, have you seen these words before? Of course you have, right? What do? Why are they called transitional phrases or transitional devices? Transition, can you guess the meaning from the name of the word? Transition. What do? You use transitional words in between sentences and sometimes in the beginning of the sentence, right? When you want to move from one sentence to the next, you use transitional devices. Transitional devices, as the name indicates, it indicates transition from one to the next, right? So they act like signposts, signposts on the roads, right? When you drive, you see several signposts on the road, right? So go slow, drive slow, okay, or something like zebra crossing ahead or pedestrian crossing ahead. Why do we have that? Why do we have signposts on the road? Give some kind of an indication, right? Oh, sorry, I was not reading the chat. The handwriting it was so long that I forgot what was in the start. But this year writing is admired. So Reema, sorry for the digression. See, Salman Rushdie, he's a fiction writer, right? He writes creative fiction. So creative writers are allowed to do whatever they want. They are not going to be caught for what they write. They can even, cartoons, right? We have all grown up reading cartoons, maybe in our own languages, right? They're allowed to use even non-words, right? Those words may not even carry a meaning, right? Random things you read, champak, or you read twinkle and all that. See, there are words which do not even carry any meanings. So this is what you call creative liberty. They're allowed to do that, right? They can write a very long sentence. They can write one a sentence uh, that runs 3 pages. If you have read Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy, you should read his books. He writes notoriously long sentences. Rushdie might look like a baby in front. He writes very very long sentences, uh, and like you said, by the time you reach the end, you won't remember what was going on. So for them, this is a style that they use purposefully to serve certain other functions, right? So they write it also because their form of writing is not rule bound, right? And they don't serve purpose. They're mostly written for pleasure. So there, these things do not apply. For professional is a more purpose driven writing, right? Quotes are more purpose driven. So obviously, you cannot go the Rushdie way or the Tolstoy way, or uh, stand the risk of being fired because you make no sense to people at workplace. So these two are very different from each other. Okay, but anyway, thank you for pointing that out. Right. So if you are a reader otherwise, if you read fictions otherwise, then you can see the stark difference between how language is used by a creative writer versus someone who's a professional writer. Right. Professional writer in the sense person who or writes professional documents. Okay. Right. Sort of, you say no, I don't know. Okay, maybe you are talking about the transitional device, right? So transitional device then is like a signpost on the road, right? They warn you, they alert you, or they give you a prior indication of what is going to come next. The same function the transitional devices in a language, right? Uh, Transitional phrases, they're indicative of what comes next. It alerts the reader on what they can expect next, right? Or they simply connect to ideas or connect two sentences with each other, right? To ensure there's a smooth flow from one sentence to the next or one paragraph to the next, right? The last line in one paragraph to the first line of the next paragraph, right? So there has to be a flow in writing, right? Shouldn't look like individual blocks having no connection with each other. So to ensure this smooth transition, you use transitional phrases. The transitional phrases makes this movement connection smoother, right? Look at the words you have here. Because, you say something, you give a condition, and then you explain the reason, right? For example, you probably have explained something, and then you're going to give an example to make it, palatable. Then, however, again, giving reason, although presenting, condition. Therefore, again, showing results, thus again showing results. Additionally, to add something new to what has been said already. Also, again, to add something that has been said already. Moreover, again, to add something that has been said already. Right. So all of these constitute what we call as transitional devices. They're extremely important in writing. You cannot write well without using transition devices. However, overuse of the transition phrases will cause the same problem as what we were discussing before, right? Wordiness. That is, if they're overused without any purpose, they have huge roles to play in writing. But if you're going to overuse them, then that makes your sentence wordy and it can be like the document says, frustrating to the reader, right? Imagine reading 3, 4 becauses in one line, right? So the same problem. Now, what is the actual reason? You've given me 4 becauses, right? So use them sparingly. Do not use them when they don't have any purpose to fulfill. So look at this example here. Uh, because the weather was cold and rainy, therefore we decided to stay indoors and watch movies since we didn't want to get wet. Additionally, we made some popcorn and cozied upon the couch because we knew it would be a perfect day for a movie marathon. Versus, the weather was cold and rainy, so we decided to stay indoors and watch movies. We made some popcorn and cozied upon the couch. It was a perfect day for a movie marathon. What is your obvious choice between the two? First one or the second one?
The second one.
Second one. I'll be surprised if somebody says first one. Because the second one is neat, and neat because you have trimmed it. Yeah, Rima, you have anything to say? Were you saying something? I think I heard you, but then I continued. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I said second.
Second. Okay. So this one is neater, right? It's compact and it's neater, and the transition devices are only used when necessary, right? So the summary is only this, that uh, use everything that's available at your disposal, but only use it with a purpose, right? Do not randomly, just because you have a washing machine at home, you don't run it every day, right? Or you're going to run the risk of getting it bad. Only when you need it, you use it. If you don't have clothes to wash, you don't have to run your washing machine, right? Similarly, the transition devices, if it commands a use, right? If you require that to, maybe make a smoother transition, maybe to add something, maybe to contrast something, maybe to provide a result, show a consequence, show an effect and cause and effect relationship, go ahead and use them. They're all at your disposal for free in your mental lexicon. But do not use it when they don't have any purpose to serve. Okay, that's the point. Now, overused paired synonyms. Okay, this is also a very notorious part in academic writing. So, common pairs of words that are inherently redundant because two words have the same meaning. Okay, look at the examples you have here. First and foremost, each and every. Okay, we all use them. Are we all uh, are we used to this? Right, in speech and writing, we this is common, right? Or uh, we all can be held culpable for using them, right? First and foremost, I would like to state, I've heard many people use this. I myself at some point have been using this a lot, right? I still maybe I do use them without, when if I'm not very conscious of what I'm saying, if it is not a formal stage or a formal meeting, maybe when I'm more casual in speech and writing, maybe I still use it, right? First and foremost, each and every, any and all, hopes and desires, always and forever, final outcome, ancient history, future plans. Plan is always futuristic, so it is always future. So future, adding future to it makes it redundant. Ancient history, history is ancient, right? You don't have to say ancient history. Free gift, gift is always free. Terrible tragedy, tragedy is always terrible. Reflect back. Reflection is basically emitting back. So you don't have to say reflect back, right? Simply say reflect. That's enough. Right? So this is another kind of uh, instance which can contribute to wordiness in document, right? Overused paired synonyms. Then overused prepositions, right? Prepositions is again, functional words. So people usually have a habit of using them wherever they want. Another notorious word, which particularly I think we as Indians are, used to, we very abundantly, very, 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 very generously we use them, which is the article the. Okay, we use it everywhere. Even when there is no requirement for the article the, we'll keep using the everywhere. Okay. So definite article the is a problem for Indian writing, Indian English writing, sorry. Overuse of preposition is again a problem with Indian English writing. So look at an example there. So I work from between, this is the part, reading it if you haven't figured it out. I work from between 9 a.m. to about 5 p.m. and take a 1 hour break at about noon. So, how many prepositions do you have here? From, between, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About 6 of them, right? Total 6. Do we need it? We really don't need it. Look at this part. I work from between 9 a.m. to about 5 a.m. I work from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. That's all. And take a 1 hour break around. So, a lot of this happens because we transliterate. When you write, we are not writing in English. What we're basically doing is we are transliterating from our language to English, right? So, our languages are morphologically richer. So, if you're going to directly translate or transliterate our sentences into English, you're going to end up writing way too much than what you should actually be writing. And in English, that kind of constructions look very awkward. In our languages, they're perfectly fine because we are all of our languages in the spoken in the Indian subcontinent, they're morphologically rich, right? Uh, but that kind of richness, and this is not to say that English is a bad language, it's not morphologically rich, but uh, this is about the difference in the nature of languages, right? Some of our languages, they are morphologically rich by nature. English it doesn't need that many words to express the meaning, right? So when you try to transliterate it from our language to English without making the adjustments that's specific to English, it sounds very awkward to English speakers, right? People who use that language. And one such case is the overuse of preposition. Informality and slang, I think we already discussed. I'm not going to discuss it, but I'll show you an example, right? Read this example. Shakespeare's Hamlet gets hella crazy with its gnarly themes of betrayal, revenge, and the intense struggle with the existential crisis, Since his uncle got totally caught in 4K killing his dad and marrying his mom, okay? Hamlet knows he is getting slept on as their hire, but he's tripping about whether to get payback or just bounce. Honestly, it's giving Lion King. This is typical, messenger internet language, right? Slang is basically this, right? I think everywhere there is slang, you can identify. Where are the slangs here? Can you identify in this the example? The first line, at least one example, I think you can point out. I'm not looking at the chat, so it would be nice if you can. Why do publishers write ancient history? That's a good question. You should write back to them and ask why you're writing ancient history. History is anyway, we're talking about ancient times when the moment you say history. Right? See, uh, ideally what you should be doing is you should write history and then specify the period in which it is written instead of saying ancient history, modern history. These are very loose terms. Okay, when you say modern history, modernism doesn't follow the same timeline in all disciplines, right? English literature follows a different timeline for modern history, what it refers to as modern age. Science, when it refers to modernism, it has a different timeline to follow. So there is no unified timeline for ancient and modern across disciplines. So instead of simply saying ancient and modern, you be more specific. When you say history, you say from which period to which period. Give the time, right? Say 1875 to. So if I'm saying history of India, instead of saying modern history of India, I say 1857 to present or 1857 to 1947, right? Uh, or contemporary history. Instead of saying contemporary history, I should give the time period. So this is an oversight. I mean, publishers, why do they do that? It's not the publisher's thing. The author should mention that, right? The publisher might tell you many things because they are not experts. So you are the subject expert. You should tell them that this is not the title of my book. I would title it like this. Okay? these kind of things usually they accept. I know the publishing industry has grown beyond our reach now. They can interfere at several stages. But as an author, you can put your foot down and say that no, this is going to make the title ambiguous and it's not going to make it wrong. I wanted this. You can make other changes, but no. It's ideally how they should be. Okay. But again, that is ideal. Some good publishers agree. If they are well-known publishers, then they do. But some of them they get diluted. Sometimes the geography where the country where it is published also matters. Some places they can bend the rules way too much. Some places they are very strict about it. So things get implemented. Okay, so this one, see for yourself the example that you have here, and then the more serious passage, in the serious in the sense the one that is cleared of all the slang and informalities, right? Shakespeare's Hamlet deals with themes of betrayal, revenge, and the inherently human struggle to figure out the meaning of existence. After receiving supernatural evidence of his uncle murdering his father, marrying his mother, and usurping the throne, Hamlet uses his position as the overlooked heir to plot a complex web of revenge. With court sycophants, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern spying on him under the pretense of friendship, Hamlet seeks his form of justice while tragically playing into a greater network of plots that lead to his death. So this is definitely, between the first and the second paragraph, the second example that is given on the slide here, the page document here. Second one is it has clarity, right? The meanings are clearer in this because you're using more universal terms. You're not using Hella and Aiken is getting slept on and it's giving Lion King, tripping about. These are more of internet slang commutes register. This is not accessible to everybody, but that's not the case with more formal second approach that we have. The meanings are clearer. The ambiguity is quite less. If at all there is some ambiguity, it is because probably you don't know the meaning of a given word, which you can always check in a dictionary. Right? It's not a big deal. But it's not like the other one. Right? 4K killing. What is 4K killing? Someone who's not very savvy with the internet world may not understand it as well, right? Okay, acceptable wordiness. We'll close with this today because I have another class at 4. So, acceptable wordiness is the first one. I told you about the contractions, right? Extending contractions. So, what it is saying is basically that can, shouldn't, wouldn't, didn't, this is not allowed. So, instead of writing them in the contractive form, contractions, you have to expand them. So, this thing is allowed in the academic writing. So, extending contractions is an acceptable wordiness. Second thing is presenting detailed ideas and concepts. So when you have to present an idea or a concept that requires detailing, sometimes long sentences are allowed, right? So there's a difference between writing a long sentence to clarify your point versus writing a long sentence because you don't know how to write it in a short way. These are two different things, right? So look at the example here. The intricate web of connections between socioeconomic disparities and access to quality education underscores the complex, clashing dynamics of modern society's ability to foster equitable opportunities for all its members. This is a pretty long sentence, but then this is a sentence that is trying to explain a concept, right? Give a detail of the idea, give a detailing of the idea, right? So in such cases, it is okay. That kind of long sentences are okay, right? When is it not allowed? It's not allowed when it has got nothing to add, when your phrases are all irrelevant, when you don't have anything meaningful to add to your write-up and you're simply making it long because you want to, finish that count. I need to write 100 words. So I'll add some additional 25 words just like that, even though they don't do anything well to my sentence, right? That kind of additions is what you should be careful. Not the ones which would add meaning or would, help in providing details, right? Okay. And again, yeah. So like they say, there could be concise ways of writing this sentence, but then by itself, the sentence is not a problem, right? Writing the sentence in the way that you've seen here is not a problem. But of course, if you are not a big fan of long sentences, want to trim it, I am not. I usually don't like long sentences, even if it is about detailing. I like breaking sentences into 2 or 3 instead of making it quite long. So it depends on your style of writing. If you do not prefer lengthy sentences for whatever reason, then you can use a different concise format of writing. Then hedging. What does hedging mean? Hedging a claim. This is again an allowed wordiness. I think we discussed this already. Hedging is when a writer uses less specific words and phrases to soften the certainty. This is the passive voice part. Okay, we discussed this already. So using passive voice, people were asking what would they do? The exact term would be hedging, right? Hedging is all that we discuss, right? To soften your stance when you are not sure of the certainty of the claim, right? Uh, the using of language to fit that problem, to fit the purpose of softening the stance, or so softening because there is no certainty of claim, is called hedging, right? So you will see example for this. Let's just, you can read this. I think I already explained this to you, but for your purpose, maybe you can read it once again. Hedging is not considered wordiness because it serves multiple academic purposes. The softened tone allows the reader to acknowledge that the writer is making a claim supported by evidence, not an unassailable factual statement. Okay. Hedging also gives the writer some deniability, right? If you want to deny it in future, it helps you do that, right? When you use more of a passive voice, deniability becomes a point. If you make absolute claims, then you cannot deny it in the future, right? Deniability, if their claims are proven incorrect, that is the future, and it offers a possibility for future research to be done. Okay, that's the point. Example, see, the example is there. The study's data suggests a correlation between increased coffee consumption and heightened alertness. It's important to acknowledge that individual responses may vary, and further research is warranted to fully substantiate this claim. So look at this, the study's data suggests a correlation. It doesn't say proves a connection, say suggests a correlation. So this is a passive use of language. Okay. So as to give the writer some plausibility of denying this in the future in case this correlation is proven to be wrong in the future. This is called hedging. Okay. So when we write the report, we'll try to implement some of these things. But I think for today, I want to close the class with this point on the point of language, right? The language is what we were discussing in the slide, right? Where is the slide? Where is the slide? Where did it go? Yeah. Good. So this was the point where we were discussing, right? We're discussing the formal language in a report. So we discussed all these points here. And additionally, I've also talked to you about the aspect of wordiness in professional writing, okay, and how to avoid it. We'll close it for today at this point, and we'll take up the rest of the things in tomorrow's class, right? So we'll begin with an exercise tomorrow. Then we'll move on to the basics of report writing, structure of the report, and types of report. Okay, only few things, and then we can. Okay, right. Any quick questions? We last 2 minutes before I sign up.
Yes.
Can we?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, when we write a report, our intention should be to use words that make most of the readers, comfortable.
Hmm.
So sometimes we have to use words like ancient history or terrible tragedy so that, the readers find it more attuned with them. So is that okay if you use?
No, no, no. So professional reports, see, being attuned to the writer's comfort is not a point for the writer, especially when you're a professional writer, right? So you're not writing for the comfortability of the writer. You're reporting. You're basically saying things as it is, right? So you're, as a professional writer, nuance or style or fancy or anything, any form of record writing should not be your concern. For a professional writer, everything is secondary. Clarity of writing is your priority, right? You write only that which gives clarity. Anything that adds or anything that creates confusion, anything that creates ambiguity should not be your goal. Clarity is the king in professional writing, right? Or queen, let's say, because we need to avoid biased language, right? Let's say clarity is the key, avoid king and queen. So that's the key thing. That's the crux of the professional writing. Nuances, adding anything, any descriptive facts about it, or anything that is additional and is not immediately necessary for the expression of meaning must be avoided in professional writing. That's the golden rule for professional writing. Clarity about anything else. So making people comfortable, not your task, right? Writing it in a way that they like, again, not your task, right? People have to get accustomed to this form of writing because they should know that this is a persuasive piece. This is a purpose-driven piece that I'm writing. So this is action-oriented. So things are going to be to the point, right? So that's fine. And also, terrible tragedy by itself doesn't make any sense, also, right? So tragedy itself has the meaning encapsulated in it, right? Uh, Writing doesn't have to be dramatic, like how you speak. Particularly professional writing doesn't need to have drama. It has to be simple, has to be objective, has to be clear. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. You get recorded lecture of workshop on blog writing. I do not know. Saurabh, could you write to the forum and ask them to upload the sessions? I think people will take a note of it. I do not know. Since I didn't do the session, I am not aware of it when it happened. You can write to the forum, tag the instructor, and ask them to upload the sessions. It is not done yet. Okay, all right. So we'll meet tomorrow again. I need to rush to the other class at 4 o'clock. Thank you so much and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. See you.